mind giving maybe a little bit of a background about where you grew up, where you went to school, and what you studied, how you got interested in that?
Sure, absolutely, no problem. Yeah, I'm actually originally from Virginia, not the Midwest, and I went to school at Virginia Tech, state school sort of thing. And when I went into school, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I grew up on a horse farm, so of course I decided that I wanted to be a veterinarian. Of course, that's what everybody who is around animals decides they want to do, it seems like, at some point. So I went in undecided, and there's like an agriculture school there, and then whatever I was doing, it was okay, but I wasn't like in love with what I was working, the classes I was taking. Really liked my intro bio classes, and then I ended up taking some second level, like the 200 level bio classes. I think evolutionary biology was the one I was like, oh, biology degree, that's what I'll do. So I transferred over to biology, and then once I did that, all my advisors were like, oh, hey, you can't get a job with just a degree in biology. You have to have experience, and like you need to start doing research now, and be prepared that you might have to go to graduate school and all this sort of stuff, which worked really well for me. And so I ended up joining a water quality. It was a stream ecology lab technically. I joined that in it was after my sophomore year, right between sophomore and junior year. They're called the Virginia Tech Stream Team. It was very cute.
That's cute.
All sort of working together in one lab, which was a really neat experience. And then from there, I was like, washing bottles and stuff like that. I'm pretty content. Like, oh yeah, I can do this. I can weigh things. I can wash things. This is cool. And then one of the professors was like, oh, hey, Laura, this is great. Okay, so you've been here for like a semester. That's awesome. You're gonna have to do research next semester. And I, like, no question. It was just like, come, meet with me next week at this time and with your research ideas. And I was just like, oh, okay. Like totally unprepared, like out of the blue. I'm like, I don't know that I can do this. And I was like, okay, well, I don't have a choice. So I came up with some research idea and ended up measuring like nutrient of things that grew on like wood and leaves and streams, which is kind of cool. And then, so I worked on that it was like the summer. I ended up doing an internship my junior year, like with research and stuff. So I worked on it that summer. Then came my senior year, I was like, oh, I have to know what I want to do, right? That's the scariest part. And then luckily at that time, a lot of the collaborators, the people in the lab, had just gotten this huge grant to look at nitrogen cycling in really small streams. And so there were lots of opportunities to go and find graduate work. And so I ended up going to University of Notre Dame and working with Jen Tank. She was my PhD advisor. She actually came from Virginia Tech, so I feel like I just sort of
kind of followed her.
Exactly, just kind of followed her around. But something about, I don't know, when I went and did my on-campus visit, it really clicked. And so I did all my graduate work at Notre Dame, and then when I was done there, I ended up doing a postdoc at Indiana University in Bloomington. I was there for 4 years. Had a really great time. It was a lot of fun. And then from there, I moved here to Heidelberg. I came to Heidelberg as a research scientist. Right, they were basically just looking for another person to add to the group to like analyze data and whatnot. And then after I was here for about 2 years, our director decided he wanted to retire, and they were like, well, Laura, you think you could be director? I was like, I think so, but maybe I could have some overlap, So then after that, I ended up becoming director, and that was 2016. So.
Oh, that's awesome. So
here I am.
I know you said you're the director of the Water Quality Research Center. Maybe you could talk about a little bit about what your organization does and maybe specifically more about what you do?
Yeah. So we're kind of an oddball. We're this big research lab in a teeny tiny little university in the middle of nowhere, Ohio, right? So we're going to put that so you're in this large university, large state school in Nebraska. In contrast, we have here, I think we are around 1,200 students total, the whole university, right?
Wow.
So teeny tiny university, right? We're really into liberal arts education. The idea being that any students who come here, they get, one-on-one contact with faculty, first of all, but then also that they, that you get trained broadly so that wherever you go, when you leave, you have like a certain set of skills, and you can be flexible in terms of what you're working on, because there's like set critical thinking skills that you learn, which is fairly common across all colleges, but that's sort of the goal here. But aside from that, then we have this big water quality research lab here, which is a little bit strange. And it basically went back to, a biology professor who started here in the late 60s. He happened to add into one of his laboratory introductory biology classes, river sampling lab, that then the way he set it up, there were so many labs, they collected so much data and was so rigorous, that back in the late 60s, that's when, that was like before the environmental movement, that's when all of that was picking up speed. So there was interest in like what water quality was in rivers, and he realized that his class had more water quality information on the Sandusky River here than for Lake Erie than like any other river in the Lake Erie watershed. And they wanted to know about these rivers. And he's like, oh, well, we can write this proposal to what was pre-EPA, it's called the Federal Water Quality Administration, and get some funding to do real research. And then everything snowballed from there. They did that research, found that there was a lot more phosphorus coming from agriculture than sewage in these areas. And then, but like in the 60s, all of the management was for controlling what was coming out of sewage effluents, right? Like reducing that phosphorus. And so, it's like, okay, well, if there's a lot more agricultural phosphorus, then we're going to need to be controlling something aside from just our wastewater treatment plants to fix Lake Erie. And so, it ended up, like I said, snowballing such that by the mid-70s, the Army Corps of Engineers said, hey, it'd be really awesome if you guys could monitor these 3 big tributaries into Lake Erie really, really frequently. We want to know where phosphorus is coming from. And so in 1974, we started what we call our tributary loading program, where we basically collect, we have multiple sites now, but back then we started on the Maumee, the Sandusky, and the Portage River, so these are 3 big watersheds going into the western end of Lake Erie. And we started collecting samples 3 times a day all year round using automated samplers. And then essentially we just never stopped. So, we started there with those 2 rivers. And then in the 80s we added a few more rivers, a couple that were close here because we have some, like a creek that goes through campus, for instance. And then in the mid-90s there was a lot of question about what was getting into the Ohio River and then the Mississippi and then down to the Gulf of Mexico. So we added 3 really big tributaries to the Ohio River that drain from Ohio. We have a problem lake, where it doesn't, in the Midwest, doesn't have a problem small inland lake. So we had a problem inland lake. We've been monitoring around there. We've added a lot more stations in Lake Erie. And so we're up to, I think we're at 23 locations now where we're doing this high-frequency monitoring. And what we're most interested in are nutrients. So we monitor for various forms of phosphorus, various forms of nitrogen. We do sediments. We have some herbicide runoff data, and various like like chloride and like sulfate, little things that are useful for a lot of other reasons as well. So, and so what it's done is really cool because now we have these huge data sets, and we can say exactly what's going where. We can tell without any other information from the watershed. We can tell just by sort of the patterns of runoff, like general sources of these nutrients. But then when we partner with either agriculture or the state or with our point sources, we can really start to do really cool like mass balances by the watershed and say, oh, well, we know 88% of the phosphorus coming out of the Maumee River is coming from land runoff, and so we need to work on that, so like those things, which are pretty sweet. And so what our data is best known for now is our input data from the Maumee River that go into to Lake Erie. That data is really closely correlated to the size of these really big harmful algal blooms we get in the western basin of Lake Erie every year. You may have heard, like in 2014, so about 5 years ago, Toledo's drinking water plant got shut down, right? So like there's no contact order for drinking water for 3 days because algal toxins were in the finished drinking water. And so like that raised all kinds of alarms, right? But then, before then we were already saying, we're like, we can already tell you based off of what's been coming in the spring from March through July, how big this bloom is going to be from, August or October.
Great. Well, maybe just shifting gears a little bit, kind of towards the seminar, what kind of advice would you give to a student that is looking to get into water quality or even just research, since I know you've been involved in a lot of research?
Yeah, well, I think the first one is to not be intimidated, right? So, I still have, but it's, it's kind of ebbs and flows, but like, I've always sort of had this imposter syndrome feeling, I'm like, oh, I can't do research. I'm not that person. And I think what you have to remember is that there's room for everyone's thoughts and ideas when it comes to doing scientific research. Really, it is just asking questions and building upon knowledge that already exists. And so I would say, if there's any interest in sort of the scientific world at all, just like, I want to know how nature works. Like, there's no question too small to just go out there and do it. For undergraduates, I would say if you are interested in that thing and in science at all, then try and find a lab to work in. And I know it sounds scary, but it's not. Just go and do it. If you have to think about it for 3 weeks, I did. I had to think for a while. Like, hey, I'm gonna talk to him, and it's like, I like to like make it seem like it was this big, like, oh, I always knew water quality. And I was like, no, it's like I sent out a bunch of emails, and like the other labs I had sent emails to wanted me to like put together a resume, and the stream ecology lab told me to just come in and talk to them. So I did that one, right? It's like there's nothing fancy about it, and I think about that sometimes. I'm like, I could be a forest ecologist right now. Who knows if I like worked a little harder, but I would say just don't be intimidated. Everyone's nice, and the other thing is trying to find a community. Like when you're at a large school, sometimes it seems like there's just so many people, but what you find if you get into any sort of a lab atmosphere is that then you're in a smaller group of people and you still like get that hands-on experience, like one-on-one experience with like professors or graduate students, and they all can tell you something interesting, right? If you're not at all interested in research, which I think is also a valid thing, I would say just try and get some experience somewhere. Try to get some internship wherever you can. Like usually there's some state agency that is looking for summer interns, it seems like everywhere, so I would think that would be a priority. And then if you can do that, then if you graduate and you decide you don't want to go to graduate school, and you're in some sort of a water quality field or water quality major. So I know you guys have some more specific majors like that, like water resources and stuff like that, if I remember correctly. Then I would say, just get some sort of experience, and then that will get you to where you need to go. There's going to be a huge need for people doing the jobs that probably don't sound very enticing, right? Like wastewater treatment, right? Or even drinking water, but like there is a technical need, and those needs for those jobs are going to just be increasing. And everything I've heard for that sort of thing is that, yeah, you might come in and not get paid very well at first, but there's huge opportunities for like getting, for basically, getting, moving forward in the organization, getting raises and promotions and that sort of thing. So, where like, I think that if you were on a top tier of a wastewater or drinking water plant right now, you probably get paid more than most professors, right? Like, it's a pretty good place to be, and for those types of people it's not going to go away. There's always consulting firms and those types of things too. Like if you're more interested in restoration or fish or whatever, there's positions out there. Just be flexible and try and get some experience.
I'm super interested in water quality, so it was really a lot of great information. So that's awesome. I don't have any more questions, but I know that we're looking forward to having you in the spring. I think it's going to be a great series. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, the reason I'm coming, I don't know if you realize, we had a postdoc who was here who got a position at the Water Sciences Lab there with Dan Snow. Her name is Tanya Biswas. And And so we have a project in collaboration with them where we're measuring Roundup and rivers around here. And so we collect the samples and we send it to them for analysis. And we're on the verge of another proposal being funded that's going to be looking at veterinary antibiotics. So, you know, that might be running off and coming out of some of our watersheds. So, you know, I think the reason I'm coming is in part because I'm like, oh, I should come out and meet you guys, you know, and like see your facilities and talk about projects, and I may as well do a seminar and speak with other folks there too. So, you know, it's a small world in the end.
That's awesome. I did not know that. That's so cool. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and then also, yeah, you should have a professor there. His name's Steve Thomas.
Okay.
He's head of one of the water resources majors, but I can't remember what the exact phrase of it is. And he was a postdoc while I was an undergraduate at Virginia Tech. And so, like, some of the things that I learned that I was able to use in graduate school, like, he taught me way back when. So,
We get to see him again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So, like,
those
someone to work with, you know, he might be a good one to look into.
You should. You should look into that. Wow. That's so cool, those connections. But awesome. Yeah. Okay. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me this morning. So.
No problem. Yeah, if you have any follow-up questions, just let me know, or something needs to be clarified, you're looking at it over again, yeah, I said something that didn't make any sense, just let me know.
Okay. Yeah. Well, great. Thank you so much.